My name doesn't matter. What matters is that 3 years ago, I was a 26-year-old event coordinator in Phoenix, Arizona, making decent money, paying my rent on time, and dating a man named Dorian who I thought was the best thing that had ever happened to me. By the time this story ends, I will have testified against him in federal court, changed my name twice, and moved to a state I won't name because old habits die hard and paranoia dies never. I need you to understand how normal it all felt at first. That's the part people don't get when they hear cartel and money laundering and picture some Hollywood fever dream of gold chains and gunfights. It wasn't like that. It was spreadsheets. It was a man in a nice car who remembered my coffee order. It was slow and warm, and it crept. I met Dorian at a wedding I was coordinating at a resort outside Scottsdale. He was a guest, not the groom's friend exactly, more like a friend of the family, which in hindsight should have been my first red flag, because nobody could ever quite explain whose family. He was 34, well-dressed without trying too hard, drove a clean black Tahoe, and had this way of making you feel like the only interesting person in a room full of open bars and string quartets. He asked for my number under the guise of wanting to book me for a corporate event. I gave it to him because he was handsome and because I was 26 and lonely in the specific way you are when you spend every weekend building other people's happiest days and going home to an empty apartment afterward. He called 2 days later, not about an event, just to talk. For the first 4 months, it was the best relationship of my life. He took me to dinners I couldn't afford on my own, listened when I talked about my family, remembered small things, my sister's name, that I was allergic to shellfish, that I hated when people chewed with their mouths open. He told me he ran an import-export business, mostly furniture and home goods, sourced from Mexico and Central America, sold to boutique retailers across the Southwest. He showed me photos of warehouses. He showed me invoices. It all looked exactly as boring and legitimate as it needed it to look. The ask, when it came, was small. That's how these things always start. Small. "I need a favor," he said one night in October over wine at his place in Paradise Valley. "My accountant's out sick, and I've got a payment that needs to move before end of week. Would you mind depositing this into your account and wiring it to a supplier? I'll pay you $500 for the hassle." $500 to walk into a bank and deposit a cashier's check. It sounded like nothing. It sounded like the kind of thing you'd do for a friend, let alone a boyfriend you were already imagining a future with. I did it. Nothing bad happened. The check cleared. I wired the money to an account with a business name I didn't recognize, and Dorian handed me 5 crisp $100 bills like we'd just closed some cute little deal between lovers. It happened again the next month, then twice the month after that. The numbers grew. 2,000, then 5, then once, memorably, $11,000 that I moved through 3 separate transactions because Dorian explained, very casually, that the bank flags anything over 10 grand. It's just an annoying reporting thing, nothing illegal, just paperwork nobody wants to deal with. I want to tell you I didn't know. I want to tell you I was purely, blamelessly ignorant, but somewhere around the second time he asked me to break up a deposit to stay under a reporting threshold, some small, cowardly part of my brain understood that furniture importers do not need their girlfriends structuring cash transactions to dodge federal reporting laws. I understood it, and I filed it away in the part of my mind reserved for things I did not want to look at directly, the same part of the mind that lets people stay in bad situations because looking away is so much easier than the alternative. By the following spring, I wasn't just moving money. I had my own LLC. Dorian helped me set it up, told me it was for consulting, and had me open 3 business bank accounts under it. I signed paperwork I skimmed instead of read. I let him add me as an authorized user on accounts I never once looked closely at. In 18 months, federal investigators would later tell me, more than $400,000 moved through accounts with my name on them. $400,000. I made maybe $18,000 of that for myself, spread out in cash payments over a year and a half. The rest moved through me like I was a pipe, not a person, which I suppose is exactly what I was to him. The furniture warehouse was real, by the way. That's the thing that still messes with my head sometimes. It existed. There were actual crates, actual invoices for actual dining tables and actual patio sets that actual boutique stores actually sold. It was a real business. It was also, I would learn, a shell inside a shell, a legitimate operation layered directly on top of something else entirely, the way you'd build a nice house over a basement nobody's supposed to go down to. I went down into the basement by accident, on a Tuesday night in July, because I forgot my phone charger at his place and drove back to get it after he thought I'd gone home. The garage door was open. Dorian's warehouse manager, a quiet man named Esteban, who I'd met maybe 4 times, and who always looked at me like he felt sorry for something, was helping unload a delivery truck at 11 at night, which struck me as strange for a furniture business, but plenty of things about Dorian's business had started striking me as strange by then, and I'd trained myself not to ask. What caught my attention wasn't the truck. It was that one of the crates had cracked open during unloading, and instead of a dining table, I saw taped bricks, dozens of them, wrapped tight in plastic, packed into a hollowed cavity beneath a false wooden bottom. I didn't need a chemistry degree. I'd seen enough true crime TV to know exactly what I was looking at. I stood in that garage for maybe 4 seconds before Esteban saw me, and his face went the color of drywall. Dorian came around the corner a moment later. I found out afterward he'd been in a back office on a call, and the look on his face when he saw me standing there wasn't anger. It was something worse. It was calculation. I watched him do math behind his eyes, watched him decide in real time what I was worth to him now, as a liability instead of an asset. "You forgot your charger," he said. Not a question. A test to see what story I was going to tell myself and him about what I'd just seen.
I said yes. I said I forgot my charger. I took it from the kitchen counter where he told me it was, even though I knew I'd left it in the bedroom, and I drove home doing 40 in a 25 the entire way. And I did not sleep that night, and I did not sleep much for the next 6 weeks because I understood 2 things with total clarity for the first time in a year and a half. I understood that I was in a relationship with a narcotics trafficker who used a furniture business to launder cartel money through the American banking system. And I understood that I had helped him do it every step of the way with my name on the paperwork. I want to be honest about what happened next because I think it's the least glamorous, least Hollywood part of the whole thing. I didn't do anything for 6 weeks. I was too scared. Scared of him, scared of prison, scared of my own family finding out what my daughter had become an accessory to. I kept showing up to dinners. I kept smiling. I kept signing whatever he put in front of me because refusing felt more dangerous than complying. And by then, I genuinely didn't know which was true. What finally broke it open was smaller and stupider than you'd expect. Dorian asked me to open a 4th LLC, this one to receive payments from what he called a new supplier relationship in Sinaloa, and something about hearing him say that word out loud, Sinaloa, casually over guacamole at a restaurant patio like it was the name of a nice vacation spot, cracked something in me that 6 weeks of terror hadn't managed to crack. I excused myself to the bathroom, and instead of going to the bathroom, I walked straight out of that restaurant, got in a car, and drove to my sister's apartment 2 hours away in Tucson, and I told her everything. My sister is the reason I'm alive to tell you this story, instead of being a name in a news article about a woman who disappeared. She didn't yell at me. She didn't ask how I could have been so stupid, even though I deserved that question. She made coffee, sat me down, and said, "We're calling someone tomorrow. Tonight, you sleep here and you don't answer your phone." The someone we called was a criminal defense attorney because my sister, smarter than me in every way that counted that week, understood that walking into an FBI field office as a scared, unrepresented woman with my name on $400,000 of dirty money was a good way to become the person prosecutors decided to make an example of rather than the person they decided to use. The attorney listened to my whole story over a 2-hour meeting and told me something I'll never forget. You have two paths. One is you wait for them to come to you, and when they do, you're a target. The other is you go to them first, with a lawyer, with everything you know, and you become a witness instead of a defendant. The second path is harder emotionally, it's much easier legally. I chose the second path. What followed was 8 months of proffer sessions with federal prosecutors and DEA agents, wearing a wire twice, which felt like the longest 20 minutes of my entire life, sitting across from Dorian at a restaurant with a device taped against my ribs, asking him casual, rehearsed questions about supplier payments while my heart tried to escape through my sternum. I handed over every bank statement, every LLC filing, every text message I hadn't deleted, every memory I could dredge up about names, dates, delivery schedules, and the specific language Dorian used to keep everything sounding legitimate, even when it very much was not. It turned out Dorian's operation was one small node in a much larger distribution network, moving product from Mexico through Arizona and into distribution hubs in Denver, Chicago, and Atlanta, laundering proceeds back down through shell businesses exactly like the ones I'd signed my name to. My testimony, along with financial records from two other cooperating witnesses, helped federal prosecutors indict 11 people, including Dorian, Esteban, and a mid-level cartel logistics coordinator who I had met exactly once at a 4th of July barbecue, and who I had been told was a supplier from out of town. The trial took place a year and a half after that night in the garage. I testified for one full day. I will not describe Dorian's face while I did it because I don't think about it more than I have to, but I will tell you that when the prosecutor asked me to describe what I saw when the crate cracked open, my voice didn't shake, and that surprised me more than anything else in the entire ordeal. Dorian was convicted on federal charges of conspiracy to distribute narcotics and money laundering. He's currently serving a sentence that will keep him in federal prison until he's in his 60s. Esteban took a plea deal and testified against the logistics coordinator, who got even more time than Dorian did. I was never charged. My cooperation agreement, combined with the fact that prosecutors believed, correctly, that I had genuinely not known what I was moving until that night in the garage, kept me on the right side of the courtroom. I moved twice in the 2 years after the trial, not because anyone specific threatened me, nobody ever said anything to my face, but because the fear doesn't leave just because the paperwork says the case is closed. I changed my last name back to a version of my mother's maiden name. I don't do event coordination anymore because too many of my old contacts overlapped with people who knew Dorian socially, and I couldn't risk the wrong person putting two and two together at the wrong wedding. I work in accounting now, which the FBI agent who worked my case found darkly funny when I told her. She said, "You spent a year and a half laundering money, and now you catch people who do it for a living." She wasn't wrong. There's something almost like penance in it, sitting at my desk running compliance checks on wire transfers, flagging exactly the kind of structuring patterns I used to execute without a second thought. I think about the $400,000 sometimes. Not the number exactly, but what it represented, moving through accounts with my name attached, funding God knows what on the other end of that supply chain. I try not to let myself do the math on what that money bought, what it hurt, who it touched on its way from a crate in a garage in Paradise Valley to wherever it ended up. Some nights, I do the math anyway. I don't think that ever fully goes away, and honestly, I'm not sure it should. People ask me sometimes, the few people who know the whole story, whether I regret going to my sister's that night, whether I regret cooperating instead of just running and hoping nobody ever found the paperwork. I don't. Whatever fear I live with now, the moving, the name change, the flinch I still get when a black Tahoe pulls up next to me at a red light, is nothing compared to the alternative. I got to choose which version of this story I'd have to live inside. Most people in my position never get that choice at all. I still don't know, and probably never will, what happened to the delivery driver from that night, or how many other crates like that one made it through before I finally walked into that garage at the wrong time. I know the ones I helped stop. I have to let that be enough, because it's the only ending I get.